Yo, 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 how's it going? Felt like doing an episode 363 baseball talk, a little Yankee centric. It's always been a little Yankee centric because I'm a Yankee fan, and just felt the need to talk about my team, man. 13 games in the season. It's really funny looking back at when I started making these videos about 4 years ago in 2018 and how different, how much things can change for an organization, team, fan base in 4 years. So 4 years ago, the Yankees were riding a bit high, coming off a surprise ALCS appearance in 2017. I feel like the run has become a bit overrated. Honestly, I think for younger fans who are maybe teenagers now or maybe getting into college now, like that's their team. That's the team they identify with. That generation of Yankee player. Whereas for me, I mean, my team that I identify with is the Dynasty Yankees of the late '90s and 2000, and this all the subsequent playoff appearances and fantastic offenses they had, all the failure that followed 2001, the frustration of losing the 2003 World Series after the amazing ALCS against Boston, blowing 2004, obviously. But, again, the constant excellent teams, excellent offenses. We'll get to that. And those are my teams. So for fans younger than me, I'm in my mid 30s. Let's be honest. I have to be honest with myself about that. I almost said early 30s, but I'm really a lot closer to my mid 30s than my early 30s. I don't have that identification. I think I'm a bit more objective. So I really, really dug the 2017 team, but I do remember the 2017 team had long stretches of futility, mainly due to injury, to be fair. Their Pythagorean record was 162, I believe. So, on the strength of how many runs they scored versus how many runs they allowed, they were a dominant team. They only ended up winning, I believe, 92 games, mainly, as I mentioned, because of a horrific stretch. I think that started in June. A lot of injuries in the bullpen. Dylan Betances walked the world that year. While he still had a good year, he walked the world. They blew a lot of games. Tyler Clippard blew a lot of games. So when that 17 team is romanticized to the hilt, based on the fact that they won a division series against the Indians after Edwin Encarnacion got injured and Corey Kluber had a back problem. And if either of those two things are different, the Yankees might not have won that series against Cleveland because Cleveland was a terrific team that year. So I think the 17 teams overly romanticized compared to 18 and compared to 1919. That was the best team they've had since the World Series winning team in '09. Blew away the 17 team without question. And 18 and 17 can be debated. 18, they had the better results. They actually won 100 games. That team's not as well liked for whatever reason. I guess because they lost to Boston in the division series. But dollars to donuts, which is an expression that makes no sense. I probably would take the 18 team over the 17 team. It's flat out. I'd rather have 2018 Gleyber Torres and 2017 Starlin Castro. I'd certainly rather have Giancarlo Stanton at DH opposed to Matt Holliday. And I'd probably rather have Andahar over Todd Frazier / Chase Headley over the life of the season. But again, getting into kind of semantics. But really, yeah, that's like how I said. We were coming off a high, really, acquiring Stanton after what was an overly romanticized but still excellent season in 2017. Surprisingly good year. Even me, I'm usually a pie-eyed optimist. I wasn't sure they were going to be really good that year. I actually thought they were going to contend on the strength of Greg Bird hitting 35 homers, which obviously did not happen, and I never would have predicted that Severino would have had such an excellent year. So coming off that year, which was a real pleasant surprise, nabbing Stanton, expectations go up the toxicity of the fan base really comes back when people really got bored with the Yankees for a while. Certainly, the 2014 team was a bit boring. I found the 2015 team pretty interesting and enjoyable to watch. Really, for most of the season until September, where they kind of crapped out. Veteran team kind of ran out of gas. But, after a couple of years, 13, 14, 15, 16, where the entertainment value of the product was in question, certainly, expectations all of a sudden are sky high. And it's been disappointment. The team hasn't won the World Series that many were expecting, or some Yankee fans feel entitled to, quite frankly. That hasn't happened. There's been some crushing losses, whether it's the Altuve walk-off dong in 2019, where he might have had a device letting him know that a slider was coming. Who knows? There's really no proof of that. Do I think it's possible based on how effectively the Astros cheated the game, how much they invested into their cheating apparatus, how much thought they put into it from the front office to the on-field staff to the scouting department, how despicable they all behaved, all those people involved. It's certainly possible, and it's sad that it's even a possibility. But I'm going to assume it was a clean homer because there's not enough evidence. But whether it was clean or not, the ball's not coming back. Certainly. And then for me, I mean, although 20 was basically a bullshit season, that loss to the Rays really hurt in my book because I felt like that Yankee team could have gone all the way too. Certainly, as you look back on the Dodgers falling behind 3-1 to the Braves in the LCS, and they always, I feel, manage their pitching oddly in October. They go so off their regular season program where they dominate the regular season. Dodgers dominate the regular season year after year, and then every year in the playoffs they get there, and it's like, let's totally change what we're doing. Kenta Maeda, you're now a reliever. Rich Hill, you're only going to go 4 innings in Game 2 of the 2017 World Series. They do strange things, and they trip over themselves. And we saw it again last year with the way they manage their pitching staff, where, you're bringing Max Scherzer in to shut down Game 5 against the Giants. The man is in his late 30s. He's superhuman. He's a Hall of Famer, but his arm comes up sore. He's not used to doing that. I can't remember the last time Scherzer pitched in relief. I remember he did it in 2013 against the A's when he was with Detroit, obviously. He had a big relief appearance. And he had a relief appearance where he failed in 2017. I'm sorry, what year was that? The Cubs Nationals. I think that was 2017. Yes, that was 2017. That was the last time the Cubs made the league championship series, and Max had a rough relief performance. So anyway, I think the 20 Yankees, if they get by the Rays, if they win that game 1-0, which they were really, really close to doing, if Garrett Cole just didn't give up that homer to Austin Meadows, and obviously Chapman giving up the home run to Brass. So 2 pitches away from shutting the Rays out in Game 5, and maybe having a shot at slugging their way to a title with the depth of their lineup. And that was the last time their offense was great. Was during that shitty pandemic season. So yeah, a little segue. I know I'm meandering a little bit all over the place, but all these disappointing losses and the blue balls of not having won a title despite all the high expectations. And now where are we? I brought up when I started these videos in 2018 how different the feeling was around the team. That comparison, I'll say for me personally, where if you look back, 2018, I think they started 8-8. 2019, I think they started 8-10. And I really wasn't overly concerned either season, because I know as a baseball fan, it is a marathon. Cliches are sometimes true. it really does take often a full season for all weaknesses to be exposed on a roster. Certainly 2 or 3 months, and also for the strengths, for the talent. You got to pour that drink, and the foam rises, the cream rises to the top of the drink, and you got to get some drink in the cup, in the glass. And it takes 40, 50, 60 games a lot of times to really have any meaningful data in a baseball season. And I do lean on the analytical side of things, not necessarily statistically, but philosophically. I'm really just the extent of my statistical interest is, OPS, and I like WHIP, and I'm like a stat head from like 1997, and I'm okay with that because I feel like if you need to take a minute contextualizing a baseball stat, I question because we are talking about baseball here, right? I mean, people, the game was operated effectively. There were good front offices before analytics, obviously. I think the Orioles in the 60s knew what they were doing. I think the Dodgers in the 70s knew what they were doing. The Braves in the late 80s, early 90s, and on and on and on. So they're great. They're a good resource. I do think there's certainly an oversaturation in the journalism product with regard to baseball, and certainly in front offices too. And I think the Yankees are a good example of hegemonic thinking. Not enough healthy debate, healthy argument going on, I think, with the Yankees right now. And I'll kind of get to that. But anyway, when you look back, I wasn't that concerned. Those 2 years, I was a lot more confident, and my confidence has been shaken. And it really started in 2020, where like your confidence in the Yankees, my confidence in the Yankees, going back to the Yankees getting smacked around by Tampa Bay during that 60-game season, that was definitely jarring. Starting with just a bad relief outing by Luis Avalon. Who can forget that Yankee great? I remember that game, and that's everything seemed to turn around. And then we have injuries, and we have struggles in that 60-game season. We have Glaber disappointing, which has now become a common theme for 3 years. Let's be honest. We're only talking about 11 games here, but he's gotten off slow again, and it's a big concern. So yeah, the confidence in this team has been shaken. I'm not where I'm at in 18 and 19, where I'm assuming things are going to turn around, because I'm looking at what the production's going to be, and the numbers are going to be there, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. And I just don't feel that way. So, it goes back to last year. I mean, if you want to sit there and say, this offense will be fine, I know I was thinking that for a lot of last year. And then, around June or July, it's like, look, there are issues here, clearly. Some of those issues might be better this year. LeMahieu certainly looks more like himself. I don't know if he's going to ever be the DJ we saw in 19 and 20, where he's a legitimate MVP candidate. That was like even way above really what he had been in his career. He's been a guy who can really put up a nice batting average and play a good defense, but certainly not really in an MVP conversation like he was in 19 and 20. So I don't know if we're ever going to really see that DJ again. And that's okay, because if we see a DJ who hits 290 with 15, 16 bombs, that's a very good player. So that's totally fine. What the hell? What am I... What the hell am I talking about? Oh yeah, things could be better. Yeah. You had a black hole in center field last year. You had a black hole in left field. I can tell you that there isn't going to be a black hole in center field as long as Hicks is healthy, because Hicks looks like Hicks. Hicks has his limitations. He's been really bad with runners in scoring position so far this year, but I really don't want to overreact to such a small sample. That's a very WFAN caller to do, is to say, well, he looks good, but he's hitting the 2 double plays in 2 big spots, and today he popped up first and third. Look, those are at bats. I mean, they're three at bats. There's if he's doing what he's doing, if he's working the count, if he's having good ABs, he's gonna get some hits in big situations as well. So I'm not really too worried about that. So DJ looking more like himself. Hicks making sure center field's not a wasteland. We have an issue in left field. We'll get to that. Donaldson should be a net upgrade on Urshela as long as he stays healthy. That's a guy I'm not really worried about who's off slow. I'm not really worried about Donaldson. And catcher, that's the decision the Yankees made to go glove first to catcher. And we'll see how much that hurts. We'll see how much the combined OPS is under 100 between Higgy and Trevino. Because that's, it's, again, I feel like something your highly reactive fan maybe overlooks while they're really bashing players, which I understand because baseball can be frustrating. There's a lot of failure. But if you think about it, Gary, for all his warts and all his flaws, still had a slightly above average OPS plus last year. So that's like 102, I believe. I think his OPS plus was 102. I'm not positive about that, but say it was 100, and say Higgy and Trevino put up an 80 this year. So you're way under that merely passable performance. So that merely passable performance was maybe more valuable than you thought it was. You don't know what you got till it's gone, as I think Whitesnake once sang. So Gary could drive you absolutely. I was on the Sanchez train after 16. I thought he was going to be a special player. Who wouldn't think that after 16? 17, he doesn't do anything to really dissuade you other than he really has a lot of defensive issues. Girardi seems to lose trust in him as a defensive player. Girardi and Pena, who knows something about catching. But offensively, he's really the second best player on a team that came close to getting to a World Series. I don't know if they would have won the World Series, but they came close to. So that's something. And then it was, basically a nosedive other than the first 2 months or so of 2019. Straight nosedive into being barely adequate. But if you're getting absolutely nothing out of that position offensively compared to even the, disappointing results he gave you relative to what you expected of Sanchez, I'm still saying that's a significant drop-off. So that might be an issue. So that can be a downgrade compared to last year. So it's like, well, if DJ is a bit better and Hicks is a lot better than what we were running out, but Gallo is a mess and catcher is a mess, and maybe Donaldson is not great. We'll see. Again, too early to judge one way or the other, please. Gary Sheffield had like 2 home runs I think in like mid-May in 2004, and then finished second in the MVP. So again, you got to give these things a little bit of time. But just spitballing here, you see, I'm rattled. I don't have as much faith in this team as I did a few years ago, and I think for good reason. So what do we make of all this? Well, I already kind of said I think Donaldson will be okay. I think it's just a slow start. When you look at his batted ball data, again, that's analytics, so I like those analytics. I think those are really instructive. He was in the top 5 percentile of hitting the ball hard last season, so this is not a guy who's washed. Is it possible that a guy can lose it in one off season, especially when he's in his mid to late 30s? Yes, that's a possibility, but it's probably just as good as the possibility that Carlos Correa bombs out or Corey Seager hurts his back, or you know what I mean. It's that kind of outcome can happen, but I feel like it's not. See, like I've seen some fans, and again, I don't know why I pay attention to these people at all, but I've seen some fans comparing Kiner Falefa unfavorably to Seager, say, in the early going. Like, that is so unfair, because that is they took the money that would have been earmarked for a Corey Seager or a Correa or a Simeon, right, they took that money and they spent it on Donaldson. So you really want to compare those guys, free agent targets that they passed on for another offseason. They decided to not be very active in free agency. That was the path they took. You really want to compare them to Donaldson. So if Donaldson tanks, you got a point. But kind of leave, just because Kiner Falefa is playing shortstop doesn't mean the Yankees are expecting him to match Corey Seager's season or Carlos Correa's season, because that's nonsense. They just want him to play good defense and have like a 95 OPS plus and be like a not an automatic out. And he's got a little something. I think his plate discipline holds him back more than anything. He can put a barrel on a ball. He can hit a line drive consistently in the big leagues, but I think the thing that holds him back from being a better hitter is that he swings at everything and he doesn't walk enough. And when you swing at everything, you're to make weak contact because you didn't pass on a pitch that is not very hittable and then wait for a better pitch in that same at-bat. That's another underrated thing about plate discipline. It's within the at-bat as well. It's not just the walk. It's taking the 2-1 slider right on the corner, being okay that there's now 2 strikes, not being in a rush to get out of the box, and then maybe he tries throwing that slider again, and it's a mistake. And that's plate discipline. You just got a better pitch to hit. So I think that limits Falefa's upside for me. But he's not a bad player. Falefa's not the problem. Hicks is not the problem with this team. So, yeah, Joey Gallo. So, off the top, I just want to mention that at the trading deadline last year, I went to bed, or it wasn't the deadline. I think they got Gallo like a few days before. But I went to bed that night with that trade almost done. And the last thing I read was that they gave up Everson Pereira, who I really, really like, because I just feel like a center fielder who can hit is a valuable commodity. Even if he is an A-ball, that's a guy you shouldn't necessarily be in a rush to trade. Yankees, for me, inexplicably, were dangling Pereira for Gallo in that trade, as long as they got John King. A not super exciting reliever. He's decent left-handed reliever with the Rangers, and that was the framework that I saw. And then I was very relieved the next day when King, you never want a guy to be injured, but King was a little banged up. He wasn't included in the deal, and then Pereira is out of the trade. I really hope it's not true. I don't know how the Yankees would equate King, John King, being worth including Everson Pereira. Make no mistake, this front office loved them Joey Gallo. They wanted Joey Gallo. They were very, very excited to get Joey Gallo. They were extremely confident that Joey Gallo would bounce back this year. They were very, very confident that he'd be better than he was before, at any point in his career. So I've never really loved Gallo's game. Whenever the Yankees were playing Texas, I never really minded seeing him up. If you execute your pitches to Gallo, you're probably going to get him out. He will draw a walk, and that's been his biggest improvement in his game, is he's capable of having a 380, 390 on base. I refuse, I just don't see him having a 400 OBP this year. And it's not just because he's gotten off to the start he's gotten off to. I just don't think it's going to happen. So I'll cap that at 370, 380, and he's capable of doing that. Gallo's plate discipline is really weird for me because there's really never a time where I wouldn't like a guy being selective. Again, I grew up on Yankee teams that just grinded through starting pitchers, got to bullpens, and did damage to middle relievers. Obviously, baseball's changed a lot, and that style is perhaps antiquated. And I'm going to kind of conclude this by kind of theorizing on whether the Yankees' entire approach to offense is antiquated and whether they're going to get left in the dust as early as this year. So we'll see if that happens. But never really loved his game from afar. appreciated the fact that his play discipline improved. But here's something very, very telling. You look at Texas sitting on a mountain of money that they know they have. I guarantee you they knew they were going to be very aggressive in the free agent market last summer. They're saying to themselves, we've just moved into a new stadium. We stink. We're putting an awful product on the field. We don't really have a great farm system. Josh Jung, it's a real shame that he got injured because he looks like he's going to be an absolute monster. Anthony Rendon clone, I think. And it's really a shame he got hurt because he would have been up this year. But other than that, they don't have a great farm system. They've had a lot of guys disappoint. It's really worth asking if they develop players well. However, none of the players that disappointed with them really have gone on to do anything. So maybe Noah Mazzara just isn't that great, and Rougned Odor just isn't that great. And Joey Gallo, we'll see. Joey Gallo did become a quality major league player, let's be fair. I mean, no one's saying that he's not a quality major league player. He deserves to wear that uniform, and he deserves to have a chance. But never loved the game. And the thing that really bothers me about that acquisition in hindsight is I feel like it's the Yankees just kind of thumbing their nose at conventional baseball wisdom. And this is what I mean about baseball getting so complicated, so overcomplicated, where someone has to talk about what a stat means and contextualize a stat for 2 minutes. And then the way these stats are used, I feel like are stupid. Like exit velocity and the stat that measures what a guy's average should be based on how hard he's hitting the ball, except sometimes the best players in baseballs don't have the best exit velocities. So yeah, usually if you hit the ball hard, that's a good thing, but there's a lot more to being a good hitter than just squaring up a ball and hitting and destroying it. When you barrel it, there's a lot more to it than that. Jason Dominguez, the Martian, right, with the Yankees, I'm a believer in him. And, you see whenever he gets a hit with Tampa, Jason Dominguez just had a 110 mile per hour exit velo single. That's all well and good, but, there's no exit velocity for pitch recognition. There's no exit velocity for being able to handle pitches in different quadrants of the strike zone. And that's not necessarily about barreling them up either. That could be, again, I just feel like such an old fogey even saying this big ass hitting an opposite field single, which I know is laughable, especially talking about the Yankees, because it's not so funny talking about a team like San Francisco, or even, I was at the Met game today, Mets roll out Lindor, McNeil, Escobar. They just roll out 3 lefty hitters who can barrel a baseball, but also aren't totally plagued by swing and miss problems and can hit an opposite field single. I'm such a terrible baseball fan. I like a guy being able to hit well fundamentally. That's terrible. Shame on me for that. But I know the Yankees 100% said we don't give a shit about Joey Gallo's batting average because he hits the ball really hard and he draws walks and he plays great defense. So all that is true. He does hit the ball really hard when he hits it. He does play great defense, so you got nothing to say there. He is a great defensive player. There's no question about that. But again, hegemony. There had to be somebody who opposed that move on the basis of the fact that the team has swing and miss issues. Fundamentally, everybody knows that Judge and Stanton are great players. I love Judge and Stanton, especially as a Yankee fan. They're the 2 best players on the team, positional player-wise, right? But when you're built around 2 guys that are going to strike out over 150, 160 times in a given season, that means you have swing and miss issues in the middle of your lineup. As good as they are, and Judge often does bat second, Stanton bat second sometimes, but you know what I'm saying. Your 2 premium players, they swing and they miss. And that's a problem, because when you swing and miss, nothing good happens. So how I'll describe this is the Yankees pay a penalty for their slugging output. So they pay, philosophically speaking, it's like we're going to slug, so it's worth the lack of contact. And yes, my homeboys out there, my old school homeboy baseball fans out there, it's also worth the shit situational hitting, right? Because it's situational hitting is for the past 2 years. And I know we're very very early in the season, but we're seeing it again, and it's really a league wide thing because for a lot of reasons you just don't get those cripple fastballs. Pitchers around the league are just way more adept at flipping and breaking balls or flipping in a wrinkle. I mean, the pitch Hicks popped up on today was like a little weird 86 mile per hour cutter some guy threw. I didn't even know who this guy was. I think he's a rookie reliever. And you just don't get those triple fastballs as much. So I don't know what the hell. I kind of got off topic. I confused myself, but like they pay a penalty that was worth paying for a while, particularly in 2019 in an offensive environment that's not coming back. And if you look at how many guys had career years in 2019, whether Max Kepler or Hunter Dozier or anyone you want to think of who hit 30 home runs or 27, 28 home runs, is never going to do that. Never going to do that again. Never going to put up those numbers again. So, like, when you're going to hit over 250 homers, that penalty of the lack of contact and, yes, the questionable situational hitting, which, again, if we're talking about the 2019 Yankees, you can kind of throw that out the fucking window because they scored like 950 runs or whatever. That team was fantastic. But more speaking of last season and this season, right, where we've kind of seen the erosion of just, I don't want to say professionalism, like they're not trying, but like from the standpoint of like, this is baseball. You get guys on base and you try to barrel a ball, and that's how you win games. Like, it's easy for me to say sitting here, but I'm comparing them to other baseball teams. I'm not comparing it to myself trying to hit. That's just how the game works. You get guys on base and you barrel a baseball and you try to win the game. So we've kind of seen that erode last year and certainly at the start of this year. So what I'm saying is, if you want an overall hypothesis, it's that penalty of the swing and miss and of the poor situational hitting, right, is now exceeding, or if not exceeding, certainly it exceeded for much of last season, right? If it's not exceeding, it's really caught up. So this is what I mean by the possibility that they're antiquated, is that they felt justified in paying that penalty, and they figured that penalty was more than worth paying, but perhaps baseball is now going in a different direction, and your really strong offenses, of which the Yankees were not last year, right? They weren't a strong offense last season. So, Boone going up there and talking about how, the guys in the room, etc., it never really happened last year, did it? I mean, they got a little bit of a boost after the trading deadline. They certainly played better in the last 2 months of the season, but the offense never really truly got on track. You wouldn't say that was a strong offense at any point in the season, really. So all that stuff is, I don't mind Boone. I'm not like a Boone. I'm not a pitchfork. I don't wield a pitchfork talking about Boone. I think Boone's fine, but that's ridiculous. If I was a reporter, I'd be like, well, Aaron, you can talk about the guys in the room and the confidence you feel, but you never turned it around last year. So are we right? Are we right to be a little bit concerned about the offense in the early going this season? Are we right to be concerned that this team might only score 700 to 710 to 720 runs, which is going to make winning more than 91, 92 games very, very difficult unless they just pitch amazingly well, which they have in the early going, but it's unsustainable what they're doing. Nestor Cortez is going to have a 0 ERA on the season, right? And the bullpen will get tired at some point in the summer, which we saw last year. all those implosions, and the bullpen was very, very good overall, but there's implosions that happen because they get overworked, and they certainly had a lot of them last year. So you pay the price. All those nice little games, like, wow, the bullpen threw 4 shutout innings tonight. That's great. It is great, but that'll turn into an implosion. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, but at some point, when you ask them to do that all the time, and again, that's more of a pitching management issue. I'm really talking more about the offense. So that's another issue. Um, but yeah, I think that's the point, is controlling the strike zone, limiting strikeouts to a reasonable degree. No one is going to be a team of Wee Willie Keelers or Tony Gwynns or Ichiro Suzuki's or Wade Boggs's or Prime Don Mattingly's in 2022. The pitchers are throwing too hard. The stuff is too nasty. But somewhat limiting the strikeouts, which a team like, 2018 Red Sox, for example, which was probably the best team of the past however many years it's been, maybe arguably the best team since the 98 Yankees, maybe. Though that is an interesting debate. So I'm saying that's where your really premium offenses might come from, where you have a middle of the order where guy might strike out 110, 120 times. We're not talking about 160, 170, 180. That has becoming more problematic and getting exposed. And it might get exposed over the course of the season, where it's like, hey, that actually is a problem. Like Vlad Guerrero is going to strike out. Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to strike out 110 times or less. And Aaron Judge is going to strike out 180 times, 170 times, or 160 times. Stanton, same thing. And again, I'm killing Judge and Stanton. Judge and Stanton are fantastic, but I'm saying that being an issue is exacerbated when you make the decision where you look at that, you don't really see that that's a problem or think that it's a problem, and you double down and say, give me Joey Gallo, who is even more extreme, because he gets fewer knocks than Judge and Stanton. He's never even sniffed. I mean, I think he had one injury-shortened year where he hit 250, and you don't like me talking about batting average, and man, you probably already tuned out. I've watched baseball a long time, so I think I hopefully know a little something about it from my standpoint, and that's my opinion. So they doubled down on that problem, and they said it's not a problem, and thumbed their nose at any kind of conventional, down-home, simplified baseball wisdom, where, it could be a problem if you have this many guys striking out so often, and the pitching's like only getting better. Now the Orioles are coming out with guys throwing gas out of the bullpen. They go Jorge Lopez, they make him a reliever, and he's like incredible now. So I really think the Yankees need to evolve in the next couple of years. This is going to take time to really change. It's not. I prefer to watch a brand of baseball where there's more contact being made and better base running. I mean, they are so fucking bad on the bases. They were one of the worst base running teams I've ever seen last year. I guess they'll be a better this year. But again, it's not even just in going first to third or stealing bases or what have you. It's not even in those things. Good example in today's game was when DJ doesn't get the green light on the potential sacrifice fly. I forgot what inning that was. And the fucking throw doesn't even go through to the plate. And if it would have gone through to the plate, it wouldn't have come close. So again, we have that mentality where it's like, we're so good. We're so good that we don't have to force the issue on the bases. We don't have to go first to third. We don't have to try to steal a little bit more. Though they did make that adjustment last year. They started stealing a few more bags last year out of desperation. How about not trying to run the bases well out of desperation? How about actually trying to run the bases well one of these years? And again, the roster will have to churn a bit. But it's gross because it's part of the game. And again, when you get in big games in July and August when playoffs start, being at play. Sorry, bad bit of English there. But when those things really matter, and you're talking about a team, last year the Yankees and Red Sox run differential wise were so close. They were so close in quality, right? So when you're talking about teams that are really close in quality, where a bounce determines the game, things like running the bases matter. It matters. Defense matters. They are playing good defense so far this year. Let's mention that. Really, I'm kind of focusing on offense. Things related to offense. They have looked better defensively so far. Kiner Falefa, very solid. Donaldson's looked very good. DJ's had a little more pep in his step defensively. He was really banged up last year. I give him credit for playing through. Clearly, he was injured and compromised because DJ's usually always a plus defender, and even that last year, he didn't seem to have a lot of range or athleticism. So the defense is looking better, and Hicks plays a pretty good center field, even though I've always felt he's not great at coming in on balls, but what are you going to do? And that's when Meadows' ball dropped in today, but who gives a shit? They got shut out, right? So yeah, my confidence is a little bit shaken. I love to la-di-da and assume that they're going to figure it out. They got a nice little six-pack homestand here. Cleveland and Baltimore. You'd like to see them go 4-2, 5-1. But be careful, because Cleveland's run differential is very, very early. It's probably a little bit fluky, but they're hitting the shit out of the ball. Their run differential is really good, and they always pitch. I'm kind of looking forward to watching that team, actually. They're a weird team, but Quan, the guy's legit. His minor league numbers are really good. He does everything well at the plate except for hit for power. And he might grow into a little bit of power. So he's a real keeper. Miles Straw, who's always kind of had a nice theoretical game, it's finally translating on the field where he's becoming that dynamic speedster. So the Indians are showing a little zest so far. So you can't assume the Yankees are going to just walk all over them. And we're just going to get well against Cleveland, the Cleveland Guardians. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully things turn a bit. They're not going to be this bad offensively. This is sick. I mean, it's sick. Lack of power and god-awful situational hitting. I mean, they should at least hit for power. I know the ball is dead, and that ball from 2019 is never coming back. But they should hit some dingers. I mean, that is, health provided. Judge, Stan, Donaldson are going to put up numbers. It's what they do. It's why they're big-time players. So, and Rizzo as well. So, we'll see. I'm a little frustrated and flummoxed by this team. I might sound like I'm super against the front office. It's really not that extreme. It's really just the Gallo move and kind of the inability to assess, Gallo last year ends up at a low 800 OPS. So you gotta ask yourself, is the way he goes about reaching that number, which is where he'll probably be around this year, God willing, right? Because he looks like DFA material right now, but again, it's 11 games, so let's not go crazy. But let's say he ends up 770, 780 this year. Are you telling me, a guy like Andrew Benintendi wouldn't be a better fit on this ball club? Contact bat, good defender. Not as good of a defender as Gallo, not as athletic, I'll grant you that, but a good defender. Puts the bat on the ball, been in big games, solid player, and I still think there's more there. I really think Benintendi is going to be that 325, 800 OPS guy, especially with the shift gone next year. And again, I'm not saying they could have gotten Benintendi instead of Gallo. Who knows what the Royals might have asked for, but it's just, look at what you have, and your team doesn't play in a science lab. It doesn't. And it's like it's a team, and the parts have to complement each other if they can. Sometimes you throw it against the wall. Back in the day, I don't know, was there really much rhyme or reason for, like the 06, 07? It's just like, hey, let's get Bobby Abreu, fuck it, and great, you know what I mean? And if you have enough talent, that's fine, like that's okay. But if you're a little on the borderline and things are a little foggy and you're hitting some turbulence, you gotta look at baseball as it's the hardest sport to figure out, and sometimes keeping things simple is better in a way. And just saying, you know what, like we could really use a contact hitter here. Like, we're not getting a great year out of Gardner. I'm talking about last year, right? So what if we could get a guy who would give us what we wanted to get out of Gardner, so to speak, instead of kind of just making that like right, like just like we'll see. Maybe Gallo, will hit 220 with 40 homers and make me look stupid. I hope he does, but we'll see how it all turns out. But that's kind of where I'm at. I can't even really say I'm optimistic. I think they'll be good. I think they'll be in it, but I also could see a scenario where they're like 84, 85 wins, and it's a really frustrating, disappointing year. So we'll see. And that's the thing, it's like early, but it's like, show me something, like show me something in the 6 games. I'm not going to pull my hair out if they lose tomorrow. I'm not going to pull my hair out if they lose tomorrow on Saturday, because they could still win 4 in a row and go 4-2 in that 6-game, sample. But show me something, let's go. Because I don't know what the fuck I'm watching sometimes right now. Like, I get that it's cold. I get that the 2007 Yankees didn't hit early in the year, and that was like the best offensive team I ever saw in my life. So I know the beginning of the year can be a little odd, but to this degree, this is crazy. 3 shutouts in 13 games. Another game where you score 1 run in 12 innings. I mean, come on. Let's get it going a little bit. Like, 2 years in a row, you come out of the gate offensively and look like you don't know how to play baseball. And I don't know what's going on there. But I didn't even mention Glaber. Scary thought, again, 2019, guys having years they're never going to have again. If you take that 38 homer season and scale it down to like 27, 26, how's it looking then? It's a guy who wasn't showing great plate discipline, who ran into some homers, and I like the kid, man. I want it to work out, but like, it's not happening. And I really think he needs to just figure out a consistent approach, every pitch, every at-bat in the major leagues. It's really hard to hit how he hits, where, he's one version of Gleyber Torres, and then he turns into someone else with 2 strikes, where he shortens up. Like, I like shortening up and everything, but you know what I mean? There's just, he's a little bit all over the place. And that lack of consistency and that lack of kind of reliability has certainly been apparent the last couple of years. Again, this isn't a year yet, but the man is hitting 150, so it hasn't been a great start. So I'll check back in, in a couple weeks, but I hope everyone's enjoying the start of the season, and we'll see where it shakes out, man. Thanks for watching.